At our family celebration, my cousin raised a toast. To the one who'll be out of a job by Monday, cheers, sis. Everyone laughed. I just smiled, opened my laptop and said, not if your wife's inbox opens first. Then her face turned white. I swear I can still hear the clinking of the wine glasses when my cousin, Mark, lifted his cup and basically lit my whole life on fire in front of 50 people. It was supposed to be a calm Sunday family gathering in Columbus, Ohio. My aunt's 60th birthday. Soft jazz, overpriced catered chicken, those tiny cupcakes nobody actually likes. Everything was normal until Mark stood up, cleared his throat like he was about to announce a pregnancy or something, and said, to the one who'll be out of a job by Monday, cheers, sis. Everyone laughed. Full belly laughs. Even some confused chuckles from the older relatives who had no idea what was happening but laughed anyway because that's what you do at family parties. I just froze. I didn't know what he meant at first. I'd been quiet all day, sitting at the end of a long table filled with people who'd known me my whole life. I'd been tired from work, drained, but not fired. Not even close. I had just gotten a performance bonus, for God's sake. But Mark said it with this nasty grin, like he'd been waiting to drop that line all night, like he'd practiced it in his car. And the worst part, my mom laughed. She thought it was some dumb joke. Even I tried to force a smile at first, but then Mark added, you know, after everything you said at that meeting, I'd start packing up your little desk. That's when my stomach dropped. He wasn't guessing. He knew something he shouldn't have known. He worked at a completely different company across town. He had no connection to my job, but he said it so casually, too casually, and everyone at the table looked at me with these half-sympathetic, half-amused expressions. I felt my ears burn. My skin went cold. Suddenly, the whole room felt like it was tilting. I didn't say a word. I just pushed my chair back slowly, stood up, and walked toward the dining room buffet table where I'd left my bag. People thought I was embarrassed, or crying, or running away, but I wasn't. I pulled out my laptop, walked back to the table, and set it down right in front of Mark. Everyone went silent, because apparently my face didn't match the ha-ha good joke vibe they expected. I opened the screen, typed in a few things, clicked a folder, and said calmly, quietly, not if your wife's inbox opens first. Mark's smile disappeared so fast it was almost funny. His skin went chalk white. His wife's fork actually clattered to her plate. You know that moment when the air gets heavy, like the whole world is holding its breath? That's exactly what it felt like. Half the table leaned back like a blast wave was coming. Mark's wife whispered, what inbox? What is she talking about? Mark shot me this frozen look, wide eyes, tight throat, total panic. He knew exactly what inbox I meant. And he knew I had proof, all of it. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. My aunt said, what's going on? My mom whispered, honey, what did you do? I didn't answer. I just clicked one file, didn't open it, just hovered over it and said, Mark, you sure you want to finish that toast? The room went dead silent. People stopped breathing. His wife stood up so quickly her chair tipped over. Mark's voice cracked. You wouldn't. I closed the laptop, not hard, not dramatic, just a quiet snap, and stared him down. I absolutely would. And then I said the words that made his whole world shift. Because you tried to destroy my job. Now let's talk about why. I guess I should rewind a bit, because none of what happened at that table makes sense unless you understand what Mark has been to me my whole life. People hear cousin and think childhood friends, summer memories, inside jokes. That was never us. Mark and I grew up in the same town, Grove City, just outside Columbus, but we lived in different universes. He was the golden child. Star quarterback, straight teeth, rich boy confidence even though his parents weren't rich. He got everything handed to him, and everyone acted like praising him was their full-time job. Meanwhile, I was the quiet one. The one who read books, kept to myself, worked part-time jobs since I was 16, and didn't ask for anything. Our family used to joke that we were opposites, but it was never said in a light way. It always meant he was better. He shined, I blended in. He bragged, I listened. He took up space, I shrank. The funny thing is, even with all that, we were never outright enemies, just different. I stayed away from the drama, he created it. But those differences grew sharper as we got older. Fast forward to adulthood. I worked hard, got a business analyst job at a logistics company in downtown Columbus, and slowly built a reputation for being reliable and good at my work. Quiet, but solid. I wasn't loud about my accomplishments. I didn't brag. That's not my thing. Mark, on the other hand, bounced between jobs. He'd get hired because he interviews like a politician, smooth talker, big smile, and then quit or get nudged out because he never took anything seriously. Still, at every family gathering, he'd talk like he was building an empire. Even so, I didn't think he had any real grudge against me. At least, until 6 months ago. That's when his wife, Lisa, started messaging me. Not in a weird way, at first. She worked in HR for a company that occasionally collaborated with ours on compliance projects, so her reaching out wasn't strange. She asked some legit work questions, asked if I could look over a report she was preparing for a joint meeting, stuff like that. I helped. No big deal. But then she started messaging me outside of work hours, asking about Mark, asking if he seemed distracted during family events, asking if I thought he might be hiding something. I didn't know what to say. I barely knew their marriage. I brushed it off and kept my distance. Lisa always struck me as tightly wound, but I figured every marriage has its issues. Then came the weird part. One night she messaged me a screenshot of a text message, something flirty, sent to her from a number she didn't have saved. She wrote, "Looks like Mark, doesn't it?" I didn't respond. I didn't want to get in the middle of their mess. But the next morning, Mark showed up in my driveway. No warning. No, "Hey, can we talk?" He just walked up like he owned the place and snapped at me for feeding into Lisa's paranoia. I told him I hadn't said anything. I hadn't even responded. He didn't believe me. He accused me of interfering, told me to stay out of their marriage, and left in this cloud of rage. After that, things felt off. Lisa stopped messaging me entirely. Mark acted normal at family events, but in that fake way where you can tell something is brewing behind their eyes. And then, 2 months later, something happened at work that made my stomach twist. Mark somehow learned I had presented a confidential audit report to our VP. A report only 3 people had access to, including someone at Lisa's company. I didn't connect the dots yet. Not until the day he stood up at that party and announced I'd be out of a job by Monday. That's when everything clicked. And that's when I knew exactly what was in Lisa's inbox. After that awful toast, after the way Mark's face drained of color, I kept replaying the last few weeks in my head. Every odd detail, every offhand comment, every weird work moment that didn't make sense at the time. And suddenly everything lined up in one sickening straight line. 2 weeks before the party, my manager called me into his office. He wasn't mad, just confused. He asked me why I'd forwarded a sensitive internal audit draft to an external address without permission. I told him I hadn't. I showed him my email logs. Nothing. No sent messages like that. No forward. No breach from my end. He said he'd review it further, but I could see in his face that doubt had already been planted. Seeds don't need water if they're already rooted. A few days later, security emailed me about a device flag, something about my login credentials being used to access a shared file at an odd time of night. Again, I checked my logs. Nothing. No sign someone had used my laptop. Everything seemed normal. Still, I brushed it off. Thought it was a system glitch. Thought maybe it was doing some silent update. Thought anything other than sabotage because who the hell would sabotage me? I wasn't important enough for that. Or so I thought. The escalation kept creeping in, quiet and subtle. Slack messages from coworkers asking if everything was okay. My manager checking in with this tight, polite smile. Little things that felt like someone had released rumors into the air vents and the whole building inhaled them. The final straw was the day before the party. A calendar invite from HR for a Monday morning check-in. No details. No agenda. Just a cold, empty slot on my calendar. My stomach twisted. I knew HR meetings aren't friendly. They don't check in. They don't touch base. They act when something's wrong. And standing in my kitchen staring at that email, this dread settled into my spine. What if someone was trying to set me up? But I had no enemies at work. None. I stayed in my lane, did my job, met deadlines, avoided drama. So I shoved the dread down and convinced myself I was being paranoid. Then Mark opened his mouth at the family party, and everything that had been fuzzy snapped into brutal clarity. He knew about the HR meeting. He knew about the supposed leaked audit file. He knew things that no one outside my company should know, and there was only one possible route he could have learned them from. Lisa. Lisa, who worked in HR at the partner company. Lisa, who had direct access to cross-company correspondence. Lisa, who suddenly stopped messaging me right after Mark unloaded on me in my driveway. Lisa, whose behavior went from "I'm worried about Mark" to total radio silence. Lisa, who, if she believed I was meddling in her marriage, had every emotional motivation to screw me over and every professional access point to do it. But here's the part that hit me the hardest. It wasn't her face that turned white when I mentioned her inbox. It was Mark's. He looked terrified, not guilty, terrified, which meant the thing in her inbox wasn't about my job. It was about him, something he didn't want her to see, something he thought I had access to, something big enough that he'd try to wreck my entire career just to get ahead of it. And that's when I realized this wasn't just about a petty family grudge or some misplaced suspicion. This was something else, something darker, something dirtier, something worth destroying me over, and I had proof of it. Proof sitting on my laptop. Proof Lisa definitely hadn't seen yet. And judging by the way Mark's hands shook when I said inbox, he knew exactly which file I had. I stared at him across that table and thought, you came after my job to bury your secret. But now I'm going to bury you. When Mark's wife, Lisa, stood there staring at him, waiting for an explanation he clearly didn't know how to give, the whole room felt like it was vibrating. You could hear forks scraping plates in the kitchen. Someone's phone buzzed. A kid coughed. Every tiny noise sounded huge in that awful silence. My aunt tried to break the tension. All right, maybe this is just some misunderstanding. But Lisa held up her hand. No, I want to know what she means. What inbox? Mark still didn't speak. His throat bobbed like he was trying to swallow something sharp. And that's when I knew the truth needed to be dragged into the light, because this wasn't just about workplace sabotage anymore. This was about what he had done to me, how deep it went. So I took a deep breath and said loud enough for everyone at the table to hear, the audit file that got leaked, the one that could get me fired, it didn't come from me. It came from someone using your system login, Lisa. And if you check your inbox, you'll see the forwarded thread. She blinked. What are you talking about? I never. You didn't forward it, I said. He did. The words hit harder than I expected. Lisa's jaw actually dropped. A few people gasped. Even my mom's hand flew to her chest like she'd just witnessed a car crash. Mark exploded. You have no idea what you're talking about. But he wasn't yelling because he was confident. He was yelling because he was cornered. And I'd barely started. I leaned forward, my hands flat on the table, and spoke calmly, almost too calmly. You used Lisa's work laptop to access my joint project files. You pulled the draft audit, forwarded it to her inbox, then forwarded it again to a personal email you created with my initials in it. Then you sent an anonymous, whistleblower message to my HR department claiming I'd been selling internal documents. Gasps rippled through the room. My uncle muttered, Jesus, Mark. Lisa's face crumpled as reality hit her in pieces. You used my login, Mark stuttered. It wasn't like that. I didn't, but I wasn't done. I opened my laptop again, not the files themselves, just the evidence folder name, and turned it slightly so they could see the timestamp screenshots of login sessions. Your mistake, I said, was not knowing your wife's company flags every login from a different physical network. So when you logged into her account from your apartment at 1:17 a.m., it automatically logged the IP address. And that IP belongs to your router. Mark's whole body went rigid. Lisa covered her mouth. You did this from home. And then the first huge twist, the one I'd been holding back, came spilling out of my mouth before anyone else could breathe. He didn't just log into her account. He logged into mine. Not physically, but digitally. I continued. Someone tried to reset my company password 3 times in one night last week. The security logs show the recovery attempts came from an email address with your old gamer tag, Mark, the one you used in high school. You didn't even bother to hide it. A stunned hush swallowed the room. Mark finally broke. You don't understand, I had to. Had to, Lisa barked. She looked like she was about to lunge across the table. You tried to get her fired. Why? WHY? He opened his mouth, but the words wouldn't come. And that's when I said what scared him the most. You did it because of what's in those messages. The ones your wife hasn't seen yet. Mark's eyes snapped to mine, pure panic. Lisa turned sharply. Messages? What messages? I closed the laptop with another quiet snap. Ask him. She looked at him. He looked at the floor. Everyone else looked like they were witnessing a slow-motion building collapse. And in that moment, I knew the first twist wasn't even the worst part, because I still hadn't told them the real reason he tried to ruin my job. That part was darker, much darker. After the initial explosion at the table, the party basically collapsed. People drifted into the kitchen pretending to help clean up, but they were all just listening. My aunt kept wringing her hands. My mom whispered prayers under her breath, even though she didn't know what she was praying for. And Mark, he just sat there with his head in his hands, while Lisa stared at him like he'd morphed into a stranger she didn't recognize. But me, I felt strangely calm. Not happy, not triumphant, just steady. The way you feel after fighting to keep your head above water for too long and finally hitting the bottom where you can push off and rise. I walked away from the table and stepped outside onto the porch, letting the cold Columbus air hit me hard. I could still hear muffled shouting inside, Lisa demanding answers, Mark trying and failing to give them. It was a perfect distraction, exactly what I needed, because while they fought, I planned, not out of impulse, out of survival. I didn't want revenge at first. I wanted my name cleared. I wanted to protect my job. I wanted to protect myself from whatever lies Mark had planted. But the more I thought about everything he'd done, the secret login attempts, the fake whistleblower email, the fact that he weaponized his wife's career and mine just to save himself, the more something cold settled in my chest. He didn't try to hurt me by accident. He tried to destroy me, and once someone pushes you that far, there's no going back to let's talk this out. I pulled out my phone, opened the Notes app, and wrote 3 things. 1. Protect myself legally. 2. Clear my name at work. 3. Expose Mark entirely for number 1. I needed proof, actual, organized, undeniable proof. I had it, but I needed it airtight. So right there on my aunt's porch, I emailed myself a secure, time-stamped copy of all the evidence. Screenshots, access logs, IP traces, everything tied back to his devices and timestamps. I CC'd my personal Gmail, my external Drive backup service, and even my old college email. Redundant? Maybe. Necessary? Absolutely. For number 2, I rehearsed exactly what I'd tell HR on Monday. I'd walk in calmly with a folder. I'd show them the logs, the forwarded chain, the attempted login resets. I'd let them see every fingerprint he left behind. After that, I needed to request a formal investigation through our IT security team. Not only would it clear my name, it would also expose the outside interference from Lisa's company, which would force her compliance department to get involved. Number 3, that one took more thought. Because Mark's sabotage wasn't the whole story. The leaked audit wasn't the worst part, just the tool he used. The real reason he tried to blow up my job was still sitting quiet and heavy in the back of my mind. His messages. The ones Lisa hadn't seen yet. The ones that didn't involve me directly, but showed exactly what kind of person he really was. I knew showing them to Lisa would be a nuclear bomb. Her whole marriage would implode on the spot. But was that my goal? Ruining his marriage? Or was I trying to stop him from ruining anyone else's life ever again? Standing there in the cold, listening to the muffled chaos inside, I realized something. He had crossed every boundary. Violated trust. Violated privacy. Put my livelihood on the line. And the only reason any of it came to light was because he arrogantly bragged about it in front of our family. So yes, he had earned the nuclear option. But I wouldn't do it impulsively. No shouting, no emotional tantrums, no screaming matches, just quiet, strategic exposure, piece by piece, evidence by evidence. So when I walked back into the house, I didn't confront him again. Instead, I told Lisa calmly, "Check your personal email when you get home. Everything you need to see is there." Mark's head jerked up, pure fear. Lisa looked at me, confused but resolute. "What did you send me?" "You'll see." I didn't say another word. Because once she opened that inbox, the second twist would hit, and Mark wouldn't be able to lie his way out of it. Lisa didn't open the email right away. Honestly, I thought she would. She stormed out of the party with Mark trailing behind her like a guilty shadow, and I expected the next thing I'd hear would be her screaming through the walls of their house. But instead, the night went quiet. Too quiet, I didn't sleep much. I kept replaying everything. What Mark did, how close he came to ruining me, how quickly he folded when confronted. Around 3 a.m., I finally drifted off. At 7:12 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text from Lisa. Not a paragraph, not a rant, just 3 words. We need to talk. My stomach tightened. I didn't know if she was angry, devastated, confused, or all three. I texted back that I could meet her anywhere. She sent an address. It wasn't her house. It wasn't a coffee shop. It was the parking lot of a church on the south side of Columbus. Empty, quiet, out of the way. When I pulled in, Lisa was already there, sitting on the hood of her car, arms crossed, eyes red. She didn't look furious, she didn't look heartbroken, she looked stunned, hollow. She waved me over. I walked up slowly. "You read it," she nodded without looking at me. "Yeah." A long, heavy pause. I braced myself. I expected her to ask why I had those messages, how I got them, why I held on to them. But she didn't ask any of that. Instead, she said, "There's something you don't know." Her voice was flat, like she'd been awake all night, thinking herself into a numb place. "What don't I know?" I asked. Lisa took a shaky breath. "Those messages you sent me, the ones from the mystery number, they're not from just one woman." I blinked. "I know, there were multiple threads." She nodded. "Yeah, but that's not the twist." Then she reached into her bag, pulled out her phone, tapped a few times, and handed it to me. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. It was a call log. Dozens of calls, all late at night. All outgoing, all to the same number. A number I recognized instantly. My work phone. I felt the floor tilt under me. "Lisa, what is this?" She swallowed hard. "He wasn't just sending messages to other women. He wasn't just cheating." Another pause. "He was calling your office repeatedly, deep into the night." Why would he?" She shook her head. "Listen." She pressed play on an audio file, a voicemail. At first, all I heard was breathing. Slow, heavy, then a slurred voice, Mark's voice, muttering something I couldn't make out. Then I heard it clearly. "Tell her she didn't earn that job, she stole it. She stole everything. I'll fix it, I'll fix her." My blood went cold. Lisa said quietly, "He called your office 10 times that night. He was drunk and ranting. Another night he called HR, and then he called me. Told me he was taking care of the problem because you were trying to ruin our marriage." My stomach twisted. "But I never," she held up a hand. I know that now." Then she dropped the real bomb. "He told me you were the one sending me those flirty screenshots, that you were trying to break us up." I stared at her. "He said I sent them," she nodded. "And I believed him," she whispered. "I thought you were obsessed with him. I thought you were trying to expose him to punish me. I thought you wanted him." I took a step back, physically recoiling. Lisa looked sick. "I used my HR system to look into your internal files because I thought I was protecting my marriage. I thought you were attacking us. I didn't know he was the one accessing everything behind my back." Everything inside me dropped. She hadn't just been complicit. She'd been manipulated, used, weaponized. And if she hadn't shown me that voicemail, if she hadn't pieced it together, I would have walked into that HR meeting completely blindsided. Mark hadn't just tried to sabotage me to protect himself. He'd tried to destroy me because he convinced his own wife that I was the threat. And Lisa's voice cracked as she said the sentence that changed everything. "He wasn't protecting our marriage. He was protecting the woman he's actually been seeing." I froze. "What woman?" Lisa lifted her eyes, red, swollen, furious. "My sister." When Lisa said the words, "my sister," I swear the air in that church parking lot snapped in half. I just stood there staring at her, waiting for her to take it back, to say she meant something else, to tell me it was all a misunderstanding. But she didn't. She just kept talking in that dead, drained voice, the way people sound when they've cried until their body can't produce anything else. "My sister," she repeated. "He's been seeing her for months." I felt sick. "Lisa, I didn't know. I had no idea." "I know you didn't," she said quickly, "but that's not even the worst part." I didn't see how it could get worse. But it did. She told me everything, piece by piece, like her heart was unraveling in her hands and she couldn't stop it. Turns out her sister Madison, quiet, young, barely 22, had been staying with Mark and Lisa for a few weeks earlier in the year. She'd lost her apartment, wasn't stable, needed somewhere to land. Lisa offered her their spare room. And while she was out working full days at her HR job, Mark was home between contract jobs, pretending to job hunt. He wasn't job hunting. He was grooming. Lisa said Madison had always been fragile, always looking for validation, always vulnerable after a long history of crappy relationships and bad choices. Mark saw that. And instead of stepping back, instead of being a responsible adult, He leaned into it. Hard. Lisa didn't know any of this at the time. She found out after I sent her the messages, the ones with the blurred names and numbers she hadn't been able to identify before. But once she matched the timestamps, the style, the references, it all clicked. It wasn't strangers. It wasn't random women. It was Madison. And here's the part that made my skin crawl, the part that made me understand exactly how monstrous Mark actually was. Lisa told me that when she confronted him in their kitchen early that morning, after she read the emails, after she saw the logs, after she opened the files I sent, Mark didn't deny the affair. He denied the importance of it. He actually said, "It's not cheating if it's someone who was already staying with us. It was just convenient." Convenient. That word felt like a knife. Lisa said when she slapped him, hard, full force, he didn't even look sorry. He just grabbed a bag and said he needed to get ahead of the situation before the wrong story got out. And that's when she realized what he meant. He wasn't talking about their marriage. He was talking about me. Because the wrong story wasn't the affair. It was how the affair tied back to his sabotage. And finally, Lisa told me the real reason he tried to blow up my career. He convinced Madison, the sister he was sleeping with, that I was the one who'd tell Lisa the truth. He said I was jealous of their connection and wanted to break them up. He told her I hated her. He told her I'd been following her online, tracking her posts, meddling. None of it was true, but Madison believed him. And Lisa, who already thought I was interfering in her marriage, believed the pieces that fit her fears. So Mark used that to cover his tracks. He told both of them, "I'll take care of it. She won't be a problem after Monday." Lisa looked at me with this bleak expression, half apology, half horror. "He didn't just want you fired," she said quietly. "He wanted you discredited. He wanted you isolated. He wanted to make sure no one believed anything you said about him. Because if you were the unstable one, then you couldn't expose what he was doing with my sister." It hit me all at once. Every login attempt, every fake email, every rumor, every late-night call to my office, every whispered lie. He wasn't trying to win anything. He was trying to erase me, because the truth was dangerous to him. And he'd rather destroy my entire life than lose control of the two women whose lives he'd entangled for his own ego. Lisa wiped her face and whispered, "You need to finish him." "I can't." "But you can." And in that moment, I knew she was right. This wasn't just revenge, this was justice. I didn't rush my revenge. I didn't scream. I didn't threaten. I didn't go to his house or blow up his phone. I drove home from that church parking lot with my hands steady on the wheel, my mind clear, and one goal in front of me: make sure Mark could never hurt me or anyone else again. The first step was work. I walked into my HR meeting Monday morning dressed sharper than I'd been in months. Not to impress. To communicate something simple. I wasn't afraid of them, and I wasn't the one under investigation. The HR rep and the security analyst were waiting. They looked cautious, like they expected me to fold or panic. Instead, I placed a folder on the table and slid it toward them. "This," I said, "is everything you need to understand what happened." I didn't embellish. I didn't dramatize. I just walked them through the timeline. The unauthorized access logs, the forwarded audit, the duplicate login attempts, the fake whistleblower email, the calls made to my office from Mark's phone, and the evidence showing he'd used Lisa's corporate login to access shared company files. When I finished, HR didn't speak for a long moment. The security analyst finally said, "This is extremely serious." I just nodded. By that afternoon, they'd launched a full cross-company investigation. Lisa's HR department got involved. Their compliance officer reached out to me directly. They confirmed everything. The IP logs traced back to Mark's apartment, the email trail originating from his makeshift burner accounts, the unauthorized access to my files. They even pulled recordings of the calls he'd made to my office. Every fingerprint he left came back to him. By Tuesday, I was formally cleared. By Wednesday, they asked if I wanted to pursue legal action. By Thursday, Mark was permanently banned from every joint project between the two companies and was flagged for ongoing investigation. His name was blacklisted. Any reference check would show "do not hire." And that was just the beginning. The personal fallout hit harder than any HR sanction ever could. Lisa confronted her sister. Madison broke down, confessed, and left town to stay with a friend in Cincinnati. She blocked Mark on everything. She also sent me an apology message. Messy, emotional, but real. Lisa filed for divorce the next morning. She told me she'd given her company access to every message he'd ever sent from her laptop. He wasn't just looking at my files, he'd tried accessing payroll and internal compliance documentation, too. Idiot didn't realize that's a felony. A real one. On Friday, Mark showed up at my house. He didn't knock. He banged. Hard, over and over, like he expected I'd open the door and comfort him, like I'd let him explain. I didn't open it. I just spoke through the door. Everything you tried to do to me is now happening to you. But the difference is you earned it. He tried begging, then yelling, then threatening, then sobbing. I didn't say another word. After 10 minutes, I called the police, calmly, like I was reporting a noise complaint. When they showed up, I handed them the incident file number Lisa gave me, the one tied to the ongoing investigation. Let's just say Mark left my porch in the back of a patrol car. I haven't seen him since. But the final piece of revenge wasn't the HR case, or the police report, or the divorce. It was the email I sent to my entire family the following Sunday. I kept it simple. Just a single paragraph explaining what happened, with the evidence folder attached. No commentary, no anger, just the truth. By the end of the day, Mark was a ghost in our family group chat. Nobody defended him. Nobody made excuses. Even his own parents reached out to apologize for the toast incident. Life quieted after that. Peaceful, almost. And one night, sitting in my small apartment in Columbus with a cup of tea and no anxiety for the first time in months, I realized something. He tried to erase me. Instead, he erased himself. And honestly, that's the best toast he ever gave me.